10 Sinister Cryptid Encounters Revealed. Haunted camping stories that will terrify you to sleep. The woods were alive with an unsettling energy. A single mother, Sarah, ventured forth into the dark embrace of the eastern Ohio forest with her 2 kids, Ethan and Lily. This was no ordinary weekend camping trip. They were stepping into a world where whispered secrets floated on the wind, where shadows danced with sinister intent under the towering trees, and where urban legends came to life. They set up their tent as the sun dipped below the horizon, laughter echoing like fragile glass against the looming threat of darkness. But this cheerful facade began to crumble when Ethan froze, his small body taut with fear. "Mom, I hear whispers," he stammered, eyes wide with terror. The crickets chirped, but their song felt like an eerie chorus to his dread. Sarah dismissed it at first, thinking it was just the wild imaginings of a 7-year-old. But a cold knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. What kind of whispers could drift through such expansive woods? As dusk settled in, Lily, her 9-year-old daughter, insisted they explore. "We could find something magical," she chirped. With a reluctant nod, Sarah led them down a winding path that seemed alive, the trees writhing like a coiling snake. But what they discovered made the air thicken with dread, cryptic symbols carved deep into ancient bark, depicting ominous figures from local tales. The dreaded Shadow Stalker. They felt surreal, crafted by a darkness that held secrets best left undiscovered. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a park ranger, or so he claimed. "You folks need help finding the best spot?" he asked, his voice smooth like honey but with an edge that sent chills down Sarah's spine. His eyes were intense, boring into her with an unsettling energy. Against her better judgment, they followed him deeper into the woods, the pine trees now a wall of darkness pressing in around them. With every step, the path narrowed and the night deepened, swallowing the last glimmers of light. Sarah felt the weight of fear pressing down, smothering their laughter and stealing her breath. Ethan clutched her arm, heart racing as he whispered, "I still hear them, Mom." The whispers. Just then, the ranger's demeanor shifted. He was no longer the helpful guide. Something alien flickered in his eyes. Panic coursed through Sarah's veins. The unseen culprits from the story's mythical creatures that haunted campers were nothing compared to the palpable darkness she felt from him. She thought about turning back, but the woods had become a maze, twisting her sense of direction. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Now, the 3 of them were trapped, ensnared in an invisible web of dread. The whispers grew louder, swirling in a twisted cacophony that pierced through the silence of the night. It was as if the very forest hungered for their fear, waiting, watching. The ranger's demeanor had shifted completely. He reacted to the sounds with an unsettling grin, as if he understood what was about to happen. A bone-chilling howl echoed through the trees, slicing through the air, freezing Sarah in place. Her instincts screamed to flee, her heart pounding against her chest like a frantic drum. She glanced at her children, their faces were drawn in horror. They were not alone. The legends were real. They were deep in the heart of the forest, tangled in a nightmare where reality blurred with myth. With shadows closing in, she knew they either had to run or face whatever dark force awaited them. One thing was certain. The whispers weren't just wind anymore. Ethan's grip tightened around Sarah's arm, his nails digging into her skin like a lifeline. "Mom, please, we need to go back." His voice trembled, threaded with panic. Sarah felt the darkness enveloping them, a suffocating presence that tugged at the corners of her mind. The howling crescendoed, mingling with the whispers that twisted through the trees, creating a sound she couldn't quite comprehend, a symphony of fear. The ranger's smile widened now, unsettlingly wide, revealing teeth that looked far too sharp. "You should stay a while. he said in that sickly sweet voice. The trees seemed to lean closer, as if they were listening, hungry for their fear. Sarah exhaled sharply, her breath escaping like a whisper of steam in the chilling air. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but the path behind them felt like a cursed trail, warped by the unholy energy that had taken hold. Then the darkness shifted, and a figure emerged from within the trees, a silhouette with elongated limbs and a grotesque, distorted face. It was as if the very shadow of the woods had come to life. Sarah's heart raced, her mind swirling with the horrifying tales she had scoffed at back in town. The creatures from local lore were more than just stories, they were stalking her now. "Mom, look!" Lily gasped, her voice cracking. The young girl pointed, her finger trembling as she fixed her wide eyes on the emerging entity. The air grew thicker, a weight hanging heavily as if the forest itself conspired against them. The shape moved, gliding silently, its form barely illuminated by the fleeting moonlight filtering through the branches. Every bone in Sarah's body urged her to run, to shield her children from the sight of whatever horror loomed before them. Fear surged within her, raw and visceral, she had to protect them. Stepping forward, Sarah placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, her voice a low whisper, "On my count we run. No looking back." Ethan nodded, though his face was ashen, while Lily echoed the sentiment, her eyes darting nervously. 3-2. But just as she braced herself to scream 1. The whispers crescendoed, merging into a single piercing shriek that echoed around them. It sent a violent tremor through the ground, forcing Sarah to stumble. The ranger's laughter erupted at that moment, a chilling sound that melded with the howls and whispers, an unsettling chorus born from something far darker. Something deep within Sarah snapped. "Run!" she cried. They bolted. Branches whipped at their faces like claws, and the ground seemed to shift underfoot, pulling back as if attempting to trap them in its embrace. The whispers grew into a tumultuous roar, an angry wind overtaking them while the shape moved faster, slithering through the underbrush like smoke. With every frantic footfall, Sarah could feel the creature's hunger pulling at her children's energy, sapping their strength. Fear twisted her stomach as she twisted her head back for just a second, catching sight of glowing eyes following them, an unholy hunt. They dashed toward what looked like a clearing, the darkness a palpable mass at their backs. Would they find safety or only deeper horror waiting? Just as dawn's light began to filter through the trees, a flash of hope sprouted with the sound of rushing water. The river waited beyond the trees, a possible escape. But would they reach it before the forest consumed them whole? "Keep running, we're almost there," she urged, the water's roar now dominating the whispers, but as they surged into the clearing, they halted. A skeletal figure loomed at the bank, its arms outstretched like a warding spirit. The whispers began to fade, but with that, Sarah felt a searing pain tear through her chest, and the last thing she heard was Lily's terrified scream. What dark force lay in wait at the river? Would they all make it to safety, or was it only the beginning of a worse nightmare? The piercing pain twisted through Sarah's chest, a fiery grip that pulled her into an abyss of panic. She stumbled back, the world around her blurring. The skeletal figure at the riverbank remained still, its outstretched arms beckoning like a dark promise. "Mom!" Ethan screamed, his voice tearing through the chaos. The desperation in his tone clawed at her heart. Time slowed. As she fell, it felt as if the air thickened around her, trapping her in an unseen web. Shadows danced, enveloping the clearing in a suffocating embrace. "Run!" Sarah managed to croak, her eyes fixed on her children. She saw Ethan take a step forward, wavering as fear circled him like a predator. Lily clung to her brother, wide-eyed and bewildered. But the river called to them, its dark waters swirling with secrets, with terror. It was as if the figure at the bank could sense Sarah's suffering. The grin widened, rippling across its face like cracked porcelain. "Stay," the being whispered, its voice a chilling caress that lingered in the air. Heaving against the weight in her chest, Sarah fought to regain her footing, her mind racing. This wasn't the first time that stories of this place had surfaced. Old tales of creatures that lured the unwary into the depths of the forest, never to be seen again. A cold shiver crept down her spine, a truth she had dismissed. But now those tales felt like a warning, whispering dark promises. "Please, let us go," Sarah gasped, forcing her body to push through the pain. But something shifted within her, a tugging sensation that seemed to echo in time with the beating of her heart. It was familiar, almost comforting. "Mom, come on." Ethan's harsh gasp shattered her thoughts. He reached for her, eyes wide with terror but full of determination. Then the whispers returned, rolling in like a tide, wrapping around her with seductive warmth. "Join us," they coaxed, each utterance promising safety. "This is where you belong." "No." She shook her head violently, fighting against the voice, against the grip of whatever force pulled her. With one last burst of strength, she forced herself upright, steeling her resolve. "We need to go now." Ethan hesitated, torn between the strange allure of the figure and his mother's cries. But at last, he turned, shouting frantically for Lily. "Run!" The three of them sprinted toward the riverbank, the crashing water roaring like a beast awakened. For a moment, clarity pierced the fog of fear. The promise of the river wasn't an escape, it was a doorway, a gateway to the dark beneath. As they neared the bank, Sarah could see the shadowy currents swirling at the edges. Flickering lights danced below, winking like distant stars. "Don't look down," she yelled, forcing them forward, desperation pumping through her veins like adrenaline. But it was a trick. With every step, the ground shifted beneath them, pulling back, trying to toss them into the depths below. The creature's laughter echoed, an off-tune melody that sent shivers coursing through her bones. In those horrific notes, she could hear the echo of lost souls, echoing their pain beneath the surface. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, its skeletal fingers reaching for Lily. Time froze as Sarah felt the air crackle with tension, the darkness pulling at them, craving their fear, feeding on their terror. "Get back!" she hollered, launching herself toward her daughter, but the air thickened, and shadows swarmed around them. Then, a blinding flash, a beam of light broke through the near-black night from above, illuminating the figure briefly. A heartbeat passed, and Sarah saw its face twist in rage as it recoiled, dissolving into the darkness. Was this a sign of hope? Or merely an illusion, a glimpse of freedom just out of reach? As they teetered on the edge of the riverbank, the air crackled with anticipation and dread. What had they just witnessed? Were they truly safe now, or had they merely uncovered something much worse? The water roared louder, and it felt as if the world hung in a fragile balance. Ethan's voice trembled. "What if it comes back? What if it's just the beginning?" Sarah whispered, as the ground beneath them continued to tremble, hinting that something far worse lay beneath. The earth rumbled, a low growl pushing through the ground like an animal awakened from a long sleep. Sarah could hear her own heart thumping in her ears, a thundering reminder of the danger that still loomed. Ethan's grip on her arm tightened, as if he could hold on to her fear, absorb it for strength. Behind them, the shadows stirred, swirling like a dark wind. Sarah dared to glance back, dread pouring into her veins as she realized the figure was gone. But was it really gone, or had it just retreated, waiting for the moment to strike again? "Mom?" Lily whispered, voice trembling. Her little face shone in the dim light, full of innocent confusion, but all Sarah could see was the fear radiating from her daughter, the unknown lurking just out of view. She crouched down, locking eyes with Lily, searching for a semblance of safety in the storm. "We need to find a way out of here. We need to make it to the trees." Sarah gestured slightly to the dense woods surrounding the clearing, where the shadows felt less menacing but held more of the unknown. They might offer a chance of hiding, of escape. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she urged them onward. "Stay close." She moved cautiously, every leaf crunching beneath her feet like a gunshot in the stillness. The noise hung heavy in the air, vibrating with an unsettling energy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. They stepped gingerly over roots and rocks, the trees looming like silent witnesses to their sprint away from terror. Light struggled to pierce the thick canopy above, casting eerie patterns on the ground, ghostly figures dancing in their peripheral vision. Suddenly, a grating sound came from behind, a low, raspy breath that echoed against the trunk of the trees. Sarah stopped dead in her tracks, heart lurching painfully. She turned, but nothing emerged from the cover of the woods. Just the rustling leaves, their whispers laden with intent. "It's just the wind," Ethan said, though his voice cracked. He moved close to Sarah, bringing Lily with him. "We need to keep going." A flicker of determination lit her heart, but it faltered as a memory crashed over her. Why did she feel like they were moving in circles? Every step felt like it took them deeper into the labyrinth of the unknown. Every now and then, glimmers of light, like fireflies, flitted in and out of view, temptingly close yet always just beyond reach. What if it's leading us back? Sarah forced those words out, voice trembling as she swallowed back her panic. Her throat felt tight, every breath tasting metallic and bitter. "Mom!" Ethan yelled suddenly, panic flooding his features. "Look!" He pointed ahead where a glow pulsed through the trees, a rhythm that felt as though it beat in time with their own heartbeats. It drew her in, calling her forward with promises of warmth and safety, like a moth to flame. "No! Don't!" Sarah shouted. She yanked Ethan back, pulling Lily into her arms, the taste of terror thick on her tongue. That light wasn't a savior, it was a trap waiting to ensnare them in its grip of false hope. The ground below began to tremble violently, a low rumble on the verge of crescendo. Roots writhed like snakes, reaching for their feet. Panic coursed through Sarah, and she ran, pulling her children along with her. Then came the laughter, echoing from the dark beyond, a cruel sound that reverberated through the trees. It felt alive, wrapping around them, sending icy tendrils of fear spiraling down their backs. "Mom, please!" Ethan called, his eyes wide and pleading. She glanced back at the dim light that pulsed insistently, the echoing laughter intertwining with it. Something was waiting deeper in those woods, something that reveled in their terror. A clear warning drummed in her mind. They had to escape, but escape to where? Brushing past the panic, she focused on the path ahead, heart racing faster than ever. The forest felt claustrophobic now, shadows lurking behind every tree. "Keep running," Sarah urged, sweat pooling at her temples, breath coming in quick bursts. But as they rushed ahead, the ground gave way, a trap snapping shut on their heels. A dark maw materialized before them, an endless pit yawning wide, holding the promise of oblivion. "Mom!" Little Lily screamed, her voice laced with terror as they stumbled toward the edge. The world felt like it was splitting in two. The figures were back, shadows converging. The laughter grew louder, more pronounced, tantalizingly close, threading its way into their minds. Trapped between light and dark, fear slithered through Sarah's gut, squeezing tighter with every second. The choice before her crystallized: a leap into the pit, an offering to the shadows, or a fight against the unseen terror lurking just beyond their vision. But wait, was that the sound of rushing water? "Let us find out," Sarah murmured, gripping her children tightly, heart pounding with every step toward the edge of the unknown. The moment stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Sarah's heart beat in a desperate rhythm, thrumming against the thickness of the air. The shadows were creeping closer, enmeshing themselves in the fraying edges of her resolve. Another ominous laugh floated through the trees, a haunting note that sawed at her sanity as they stood at the brink. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was a brittle whisper, trembling like a candle in a draught. "Stay close," she breathed, barely knowing if she could even get the words out. Adrenaline surged through her, punctuating each frantic heartbeat. She scanned the darkness, searching for any sign of where they could escape this nightmare. The sound of rushing water, once a glimmer of hope, now felt like a malevolent current pulling them deeper into an abyss. "Mom! The light over there!" Lily pointed, her small fingers trembling as she directed their focus toward a flickering glow that broke through the shadows. It pulsed weakly, but even in that moment, it held an unsettling allure, one that twisted and beckoned. "Don't!" Sarah screamed. The laughter was getting louder, more distinct, mocking them for even considering the glowing path. She looked down at her children, raw fear etched in their faces. Could they even outrun what was hunting them? They had no choice but to jump, to trust in something beyond the darkness they felt creeping ever closer. She instinctively took a step back from the yawning pit, her pulse hammering in her ears. The ground felt unsteady beneath her feet, alive with a sinister energy. "We need to go. Now!" she shouted, pulling Ethan and Lily tighter against her side. They turned away from the pit, facing the creeping shadows and the ominous laughter that punctuated the evening air. Sarah started to run, breath coming rapidly, feeling the children's tiny bodies pressed against her, forcing her to protect them at all costs. The world spiraled around them as they sprinted, trees losing their shapes, their forms dripping into the darkness. The laughter trailed them like an invisible predator, its eerie echoes bouncing off the trunks of ancient trees, a reminder that they were still being watched. Just when she thought they were gaining distance, a sudden crash erupted to their left. She turned instinctively, shielding her children as a colossal shape emerged from the shadows, a grotesque fusion of bark and sinew, its eyes glowing like dying embers. It was as though the forest itself had twisted into a monster, a creature woken from eons of slumber, and it was hungry. "Run!" she yelled, and this time, they didn't need to be told twice. They veered right, charging through the underbrush, branches clawing at their clothes, as the monstrous howls filled the air. Sarah felt the adrenaline burning through her veins, but it was nothing compared to the horror surging behind them. Whispers slithered in the wind, words strained into one threatening chant, sounding like a warning. Join us, it wove around them, wrapping tighter as they fled, the pulsing of the malevolent light now a distant memory. Spectral hands seemed to stretch from the ground, trying to grasp their ankles, pull them back into the churning darkness of despair. "We can't stop!" Sarah cried, and they pressed on, dodging the grips of tangling roots and vines that sought to ensnare them. Sweat dripped down her forehead, stinging her eyes, and she wished she could see a sanctuary ahead, a clearing, some measure of safety, but all she encountered were more fangs of shadows diving at them. But what was that sound? A rushing torrent drawing closer. "Mom! I think it's the river," Ethan gasped, pointing ahead. A glimmer of truth pierced the encroaching gloom, hope fluttering like a moth caught in the brights of a flame. "Go! Follow me!" Her voice rang like a battle cry, filled with desperation as they barreled toward the promise of the water, their last chance to escape. As they ran, the shadows began to dissolve behind them, the malevolent laughter growing fainter. But just as they reached the riverbank, the ground trembled once more. The shadow beast let loose a warning roar, shaking the very air around them, and with it came a low rumble, one that promised destruction. "What now?" Lily cried, and before Sarah could answer, the river surged with a violent force, waves crashing violently against the bank, drawing closer to them as the world around them seemed to collapse under the weight of their terror. "Hold on tight!" Sarah yelled as another roar echoed across the water, chilling her to the bone. They weren't out of danger yet. They had to figure out what lurked beneath those murky depths and if there was a way to escape its grasp, but in the dark depths, something shifted. As the water roared, a shadow swirled beneath, closer, faster, and something was rising. Would it be the salvation they sought, or the doom that awaited them? In the chaos of crashing water and roaring shadows, a great shape churned beneath the surface. Sarah's heart raced, each pump sending adrenaline roaring through her veins. Fear gripped her like an icy hand. "Mom! Get us away from here!" Ethan cried, his face pale, eyes wide with the terror of the unknown. "I'm trying," she shouted back, tearing her gaze from the river, from the swirling darkness that looked alive, writhing just beneath the surface. Then, with a violent surge, the water bucked upward. A thick, serpentine figure broke through with a crash, sending waves spilling over the bank. It was a creature of nightmares, scales glimmering like shattered glass, eyes like coal balls glinting with malice. Its maw opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth sharp enough to slice through skin. "Run, now!" Sarah screamed, shoving her children to the side. They sprinted up the riverbank, hearts pounding, feet slipping on the wet ground. The monster snarled, a guttural sound that rattled the air as it lunged toward them. Sarah could feel its breath on her back, hot and fetid, pushing her forward even as the shadow beast behind them howled, urging them to turn back. Trees whispered ominously as they fled, the laughter of the shadows weaving through the air, wrapping tighter around them, suffocating her. "It's going to get us." Lily's young voice was drowned out by the thunder of the creature's heavy movements. "Not if I can help it." Sarah snapped, wheeling around to look at her children, eyes wide with determination. "We have to find shelter. Somewhere the shadows can't touch us." As they raced up the embankment, gasping for breath, Sarah spotted an old, decrepit shack hidden among the trees. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, the door hanging off its hinges, windows shattered. "Over there." Sarah pointed. "Quickly." They stumbled toward the shelter, the tangled underbrush clawing at their legs as if trying to pull them back into darkness. Inside the shack, a chill settled over them. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and the air was thick with stale memories. Shadows seemed to cling to the corners, whispering secrets of those who had come before, those who might never have left. "We can't stay here," Ethan trembled, looking at his sister. "What if it finds us?" "It's better than being out there," Sarah replied. She stepped further inside, forcing the door closed with a resounding thud that reverberated like a warning bell in the stillness. But silence was not their friend. The air hummed with unsettled energy, charging every dusty corner. Sarah could hear the beast breathing outside, the low growl resonating through the wood, taunting them, promising revenge for their escape. Lily whimpered softly, inching closer to her mother, seeking solace in the warm embrace of her protection. "Mom, what's happening?" I don't know." Her voice faltered, panic rising. "We just have to be quiet." And as if the woods themselves had ears, the laughter returned, mingling with the sound of claws scraping against wood. It was a reminder that even within this shelter, they were far from safe. Then, out of the shadows, something shifted. A breeze swept through the shack, whispering like a myriad of voices curling around them. Sarah's skin prickled with a sense of urgency. "Ethan!" "The windows!" He rushed forward as a spectral glow illuminated the room, flickering like a dying candle. It felt alive, beckoning them. "What is that?" Lily asked, her voice intriguingly calm, a stark contrast to the panic swirling in Sarah's heart. Ignoring her children's stares, Sarah pushed through the air as if trying to break through a bubble of doubt. She leaned closer to the glow, and for a moment, hope flickered in her chest. But then it flickered dimly, and shadows started to swirl around the source, familiar enough but twisted as if mocking her memory. "Mom, don't." The cold reached out, wrapping around Sarah's legs, dragging her backward, against her instincts. She fought, straining to break free, but in her desperation, too late, she saw the dark contours solidifying in front of her. As it emerged from the shadows, the horrific truth dawned on her. What was it really that lingered in the darkness? The moment loomed heavy, and every breath became a battle as the flickering light grew dimmer. Would they have the strength to face whatever waited just beyond their trembling grip on reality? Just as the last flicker vanished, the door splintered, caving under the weight of monstrous anticipations. "Get back!" Sarah yelled, heart pounding, ready to face the nightmare waiting on the other side. But there was more than just a darkness threatening them now. As the splintered door flew open, a chilling echo of the shadow's laughter quaked around them, and Sarah realized too late that they were already part of something much darker, and something reached out from beyond the veil, waiting for them to join in the chaos, until everything faded to black. Would they make it out alive, or would the night claim them when they least expected it? The door flung open with a crash, splintering against the wall as a wave of darkness slammed into the shack. A gust of frigid air swept through the small room, sending dust motes spiraling into a dancing frenzy. Sarah blinked, unable to comprehend the figure now standing before her, a twisted version of a man, its face a horrid mask of flesh and shadow intertwined. "Run!" she screamed, her voice cracking against the chilling terror. The creature's eyes, hollow and sunken, bore into her as if sucking the warmth from her very soul. Ethan and Lily, frozen by fear, stood behind her, hearts thundering in unison. The air felt heavy like a thick blanket of dread. Sarah's gut twisted as she locked eyes with her children. They needed to move. But that thing, whatever it was, blocked their escape. As if sensing her thoughts, the creature hissed, a sound like leaves crunching underfoot during an autumn storm. "You shouldn't have come here," it rasped, its voice slithering through the shack. "You belong to the darkness." "Mom." Lily's voice trembled as she clutched Ethan's hand tighter. "What is it?" "It's a trick. We need to." But the words faded from Sarah's mind as the shadows around the creature expanded, reaching like phantom fingers toward her children. In a frenzied rush, she scooped up both Ethan and Lily, propelling them backward as the creature advanced. They stumbled against the cracked wall, breathless gasps punctuating the suffocating silence. "We need to find another way out," Sarah urged, her own voice trembling with a sense of panic she fought to contain. But just behind the shattered windows, an unsettling sound echoed, a multitude of whispers rising and falling in cruel tandem. The shadows danced, flickering across the walls, as if celebrating the family's impending doom. It was a symphony of chaos, a grotesque melody promising despair. "Over there." Sarah pointed to a rotting wooden trapdoor in the corner, barely visible beneath decades of grime. It was their only chance. The creature, now a looming silhouette against the fading light, hissed louder, rattling the very structure of the shack with its rage. "Quick! Down the hole!" Sarah yelled. Ethan jerked, eyes wide with disbelief as he processed the hastily spoken instructions. "What if it follows us? We'll never know if we don't move," she shouted. With no time left, she pushed her children toward the trapdoor. Shadows seemed to clutch at their ankles, pulling them back. The gnashing of teeth erupted outside like a toxic storm building to a crescendo. Sarah flung open the trapdoor and without hesitation, she shoved Lily down into the darkness below, following closely after while urging Ethan, who hesitated, his feet rooted in uncertainty. "Now!" she implored, despair flooding her voice. With one last look at the creature slithering closer, Ethan finally dove into the abyss as Sarah slammed the door shut behind them. The air was cooler here, a moist, suffocating aroma of earth filling her lungs. They landed in a narrow, dark tunnel, its walls damp and dripping with water. The echoes of their fall reverberated down the tunnel, fading into silence. Stumbling in the thick darkness, her hands brushed against the cold, clammy walls. "Is everyone okay?" Sarah whispered, her heart racing as fear clawed at her throat. Ethan's shaky breath broke the silence. I think so, Lily." "Mom, I'm scared." Her daughter's voice quaked, tears lacing through the tiny fragments of confidence they all desperately held onto. "Just keep moving," Sarah urged. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud, whispering, mocking, pulling at her sanity. She could feel it creep along her skin, pressing in from all sides. In the stillness, a scraping sound pierced through the silence, echoing from deeper within the tunnel. A slow, deliberate scratch, as if something was following them, hungry and relentless. "Run!" Sarah hissed, adrenaline surging like fire. They pressed on, each step a frantic race against a growing, unseen terror. But would it be enough to escape what has been unleashed, as they sprinted through the suffocating darkness? The echoes behind them grew louder. The whispers began to swell into furious cries, punctuated by the pounding of unnatural footsteps. They had fled one nightmare, only to awaken another. Was there truly no escape from the darkness that pursued them? Or would they realize too late that the horrors they faced were but the beginning? The tunnel twisted and turned, narrowing like a serpent coiling around them. Sarah tried to keep her panic at bay, but the relentless echoes of whatever was hunting them grew louder with every hurried breath. Each scrape of claws against stone sent chills down her spine, slicing through the thick air. Faster! She urged, a desperate urgency fueling her voice as they stumbled forward. The dampness of the tunnel clung to her skin, a suffocating cloak that dripped with fear. Behind them, the whispers transformed into shrieks, voices rising and falling in a cacophony that rattled her bones. It was a language she couldn't understand, but it held an unmistakable promise of doom. "Mom, what if it gets us?" Ethan's voice shook as he clutched Lily's hand tighter. "We can't think like that," Sarah insisted, dragging them onward. "Just focus on getting out." The darkness seemed to pulse with malevolence, a living entity twisting around them as if it wanted to swallow them whole. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, but she dared not look back. They needed to keep moving, they had to escape the nightmare that had clawed its way into their lives. "Sarah, wait." Lily's breath hitched with each step. "What if there's a dead end? We'll be trapped." "Please, don't say that." Sarah shot back, her stomach knotting at the thought. She felt the weight of the tunnel closing in on them, the whispers intensifying as if the darkness was conspiring against them. Just then, they stumbled into a wide chamber. The space opened up, revealing a low ceiling dotted with jagged rock formations. The ground was littered with bones, small animal remains, but also something else. Darker, larger bones, twisted and cracked, almost unrecognizable. It was a graveyard for things she couldn't even begin to fathom. "Mom, look!" Ethan cried, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay close," Sarah hissed, feeling a sudden chill wash over them. She could feel the creature's presence lurking just beyond the edge of the flickering shadows, its breath cold against her neck. Panic surged as she slammed her back against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Suddenly, a loud thud reverberated from behind them, shaking the very ground they stood on. It echoed through the chamber like a gunshot, as terror crashed over her like icy water. They hadn't come far enough. "Let us go, now." She scrambled forward, urging her children onward. But the sound of scuttling filled the air, a quick, skittering noise that clawed at her sanity. The whispers grew more pronounced, forming distorted choruses that felt almost sentient. In the frantic search for an escape, she spotted another tunnel entrance, barely visible through the shadows. Hope ignited within her. "It's there. Come on." Just as they moved to the new tunnel, a guttural growl erupted behind them, reverberating off the stone walls. The creature was no longer hiding in the darkness, it was right there. "Mom!" Lily screamed as a monstrous figure emerged into the dim light, its twisted form silhouetted by the very thing it had become, a grotesque parody of humanity. Its eyes glowed with insatiable hunger, and with every second it stayed visible, Sarah felt the despair tighten around her heart. "Run!" She shouted again, adrenaline propelling her forward as they darted into the new tunnel, the beast's snarl ringing in their ears, chasing them with a fury that promised a horrific end. As they sprinted away, the tunnel seemed to close in, darkness consuming them once more. But just as hope flickered, Sarah paused, realizing she could no longer hear the creature. Silence fell, a suffocating weight around them, giving way to the fleeting thought that maybe, just maybe, they had escaped. But then they heard an echoing voice that called out from the shadows, "You can't hide from what lives in the dark." With that chilling revelation, they pressed on deeper into the maze, the reality that their nightmare was only just beginning creeping over them like a shadow. As the darkness thickened around them, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Something was watching, waiting. The question loomed larger than before: how much longer could they survive this new darkness? With each step, the weight of dread pressed down harder on Sarah's chest. The darkness wrapped around them like a thick fog, blurring the edges of reality. She felt Ethan cling to her jacket, his body trembling with every footfall. Lily lagged behind, her breaths coming in quick, uneven gasps. Sarah could practically feel the panic radiating from them both. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the shadows themselves might be listening. They stumbled deeper into the tunnel, the distant sound of dripping water eerily echoing. A sudden gust of cold air rushed past, carrying with it a foul stench that made Sarah gag. The smell was suffocating, reminiscent of decay and rot, washing over them, threatening to pull her into despair. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to breathe through her mouth. Then, a series of low thuds echoed behind them, synchronized with the pounding of her heart. Panic ignited within her again. The creature had not given up. She could almost hear it moving, its claws scratching against the stone floor, raspy breaths punctuating the suffocating silence. "Faster!" she shouted, practically dragging her children forward. "Where are we going?" Ethan whimpered, his voice a fragile thing in the oppressive darkness. "Anywhere but here." Sarah snapped, desperation fueling her legs as they raced through the smoky shadow. With each turn, her mind raced with possibilities of what awaited them. Was there a way out? Or were they walking straight into the jaws of hell? They broke into another opening, a small cavern riddled with more bones. This time, however, they weren't just the remnants of twisted creatures. Scattered nearby were scraps of clothing, torn and stained evidence of past victims. Her stomach churned at the thought. "Mom, I don't want to be here." Lily's voice cracked, eyes wide with fear. "This way!" Sarah shouted, motioning towards a narrow passage on the opposite side of the cave. But as they turned to run, a rumbling growl erupted from the darkness, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. The hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stood on end as icy fingers of terror crept into her soul. "Run!" They dashed through the passage, the shadows swallowing them whole once more. Each step echoed like thunder, reverberating against the walls, amplifying the creature's pursuit. It conjured visions of claws, jagged teeth, and glowing eyes blazing with rage. Sarah couldn't help but glance back, dread flooded her veins. The creature was there, a dark silhouette flickering at the edge of sight, the smirk of predation clear, its movements almost graceful, unmistakably powerful. "Mom, it's getting closer." Ethan gasped, his little legs struggling to keep pace. "Please, don't stop." She screamed, her heart racing as she urged them into a tighter sprint. They flew through the narrow passage until it opened into yet another dark cavern. This one was different. In the center stood a crumpled figure, cloaked in shadows, its form blending into the surroundings. Sarah felt an instinctive pull towards it, a strange magnetic force that beckoned her closer, even as danger loomed behind them. "What if it's another monster?" Ethan whispered, fear shining in his eyes. "I don't know," she murmured, torn between caution and intrigue. "But we can't just stand here." As they approached, the figure said something, a low murmur that felt familiar yet foreign. Before she could comprehend, the ground trembled again, fresh bursts of howls ripping through the cavern. "Oh no," Sarah breathed, the realization hitting her hard. "We have to go. Now." They spun to flee, but the way they had come was already blocked. The moving shadows coalesced into a solid wall, sealing every exit, while the growling snarls drew closer. Trapped, silent terror enveloped them, freezing Sarah's heart. In that space of horror, she felt the darkness, alive and pulsing. And just as she thought it was over, the figure in the center revealed its face, twisted, grinning, eyes that gleamed with all the sorrow of the lost. "Welcome to my realm," it whispered, drawing closer as shadows engulfed them, and just like that, Sarah realized that what had been hunting them was not just a beast but something far more sinister. A predator watching from a darkness so deep it threatened to consume everything. But before she could form a plan, the figure extended a clawed hand, and the air thickened with the promise of death. Would they have a chance to escape this time, or was this the end of their journey into the void? The moment stretched taut in the dim light of the cavern. Shadows clung to the walls, whispering secrets as the figure approached. Sarah's heart raced, and a visceral fear flooded her body. She had to think, had to find a way out. "Stay behind me." Sarah shouted, positioning her children close as the figure's grin widened. The air felt dense, constricting around them. "What do you want from us?" She spat, defiance battling the fear gripping her heart. "Want?" The creature echoed, its voice oily and smooth, wrapping around them like chains. "You're not meant to ask questions, dear. You are in my realm now, deeply entwined with the darkness." The shadows around them flickered in response, swaying as if alive. Sarah felt a rush of despair. This was it, they were trapped in this nightmare. "We're not staying here," she yelled through gritted teeth. "We will fight. You don't own us." The creature's laughter bounced off the walls, mocking her resistance, sending chills creeping down her spine. "Ah, but you see, it's too late for fighting. Your fear nourishes the darkness, it craves you." The clawed hand inched closer, the air growing colder. "Mom!" Ethan cried, his voice trembling. "I'm scared." As if her children's fear fueled the malice of the moment, shadows surged nearer, twisting with purpose. The whispers intensified, rising in a cacophony that clawed at Sarah's mind. "No! We're going to make it out of here," she said fiercely. Suddenly, a thought ignited within her. She remembered tales of light battling darkness, stories where courage transformed into a blazing weapon. "Lily, Ethan, focus on me," she yelled, desperation sharpening her voice. "We need to light our way out." "Mom?" Lily looked up, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "No, there's no time. We have to remember. Think of something bright, something that makes you feel safe." Sarah clasped their faces, making them focus, igniting their courage. "Think of the sun, of our home of love." As she spoke, a flickering warmth surged through the air, enough to make her heart race with hope. "You think your light can pierce the darkness?" The creature snarled, eyes narrowing like slits, its grin faltering as the energy shifted. Ethan squeezed Lily's hand tightly. "Do you remember the treehouse?" A wave of brightness swelled in Sarah's heart at the thought. "Yes." The sunlight shining through the windows almost instinctively, she shouted, "Now! Release your light." A vivid glow radiated from Sarah's children, laughter of memories empowering them, infusing the cavern with warmth. Colors washed over the stone walls, pushing back the shadows, breaking the hold of dread that had enveloped them. "No! No!" The figure recoiled, shadows spiraling in waves against the furious light. With newfound energy, Sarah shouted, "We fight together. Hold on to your light." Pressing forward, they moved toward the creature, light overcoming fear, illuminating the chilling abyss. A realization sparked a chance to breach the darkness, a path carved by their collective courage. Step by step, as they inched closer to the entity, a corridor of light unfurled, a route to the escape they desperately sought. "Mom, let us go." Lily's voice pierced through the haze of terror. Fueled by instinct, they raced forward, light blazing before them, illuminating the path ahead. The shadows clawed at their heels, desperation swirling in the wake of their flight, but the brilliance pushed through, dispelling the cacophony of whispers. "Faster! Keep running!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline pumping with every heartbeat, as they burst through a narrow exit into a grand, cavernous room. Outside, the world was alive with the dawn's golden glow, a sharp contrast to the nightmare they had just faced. Breathing heavily, they stumbled into the warm light, the sun enveloping them with fierce brightness. They had escaped. But as they turned back, glancing into the darkness they had left, they heard one final echoing whisper, "You can never truly escape the dark." Sarah wrapped her arms tightly around her children as the sun gleamed bright above them. They had faced darkness, but they had also discovered their light. Their love would always burn brighter than any shadow that pursued them. "We're home," she murmured, standing tall against the rising sun. There would be scars left, the memories of fear would linger. But together, as a family, they could face anything, even the whispers of darkness. Come on, she said, taking Ethan and Lily's hands into hers. Let us go home. And with that, they walked away from the woods, ready to embrace life on the other side, hoping that their shadows would fade into a memory, a lesson learned under starry skies. Now it's your turn, don't miss out. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next ghoulish tales that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, trust me, it really helps us out. Flood the comments with your reactions, your thoughts, your theories about these stories. You know I want to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only the true fans understand the value of your support.